Hello, everybody. This is Jean Hill. I'm the program coordinator for the Florida PTAC at UCF, and we are excited to have you all join us today for our federal certifications managed by the SBA. We partner with the SBA a lot. They generally do some function for us every single month. Obviously, we're working in a new day and age now, so this is the first webinar that we are having our SBA partner do with us, and we're excited to have him today. Ed Ramos is the senior area manager here for the Orlando area, so you will be getting, these programs are managed by the SBA, and he will be giving you information about them directly from the SBA. So we're excited to have him today. We're going to try to keep everyone on mute as much as possible and just answer questions at the end. If you have some questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat as we go along. So, if you have some particular questions, I'll be able to either answer them directly through the chat, or if I'm seeing a lot of things come up where some people are confused, I'll step in and stop Ed and have him, regroup on a topic a little bit, but in general, we'll try to go through the chat at the end and answer all those questions then. So welcome, and I will turn it over to Ed and let him present our program today. Ed?
Thank you, Jean and Justin, for hosting this presentation. As Jean said, the SBA and PTAC, we're very closely linked. The SBDC is one of our most important partners in leveraging business education and training for small business entities and those that want to get into business. As you all probably already know, the SBA is a federal agency. We have been around since 1953, and we offer assistance in several functional areas. We have one area that deals with business education and training, and instead of us federal workers doing the counseling and training and the other types of informational sharing assistance, we use partners in the local community like the UCF Small Business Development Center, SCORE, and the Women Business Centers. So we have a great relationship, and these programs are available pretty much in every state and territory of the union. So if you go to SBA.gov, you can look at the local resources, or you can go directly to SBDCorlando.com if you need more information. The other area where SBA offers services is in access to capital. We have been pretty busy over the last, almost 2.5, 3 months with the coronavirus disaster recovery assistance, with the PPP payroll protection program loans, the economic injury disaster loans, and basically managing information flow. These programs have been very dynamic and have been changing pretty much on a daily basis. And but we do have a number of programs that are available. We have the 7A program. We have the 504 program that is used for capital assets, acquisition of capital assets. The 7A can be used for pretty much any legal purpose under your business. And then we have a program for micro lending up to $50,000. We have another functional area which ties in directly with what we're talking here today, which is the Federal Certification and Procurement Assistance. And then we have a final area, which I sort of mentioned, which is disaster recovery. So we are a very diverse agency, and we do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So if you have any questions, SBA.gov should be your first point of reference. And then, of course, through the Small Business Development Center, the local partner SCORE, or you can reach out and find my information. I work for the North Florida district. We have 2 districts, and we handle the district in the north is located in Jacksonville, and we handle 43 counties, and Orange County is sort of like the southernmost country for us. And then I extend, I go west all the way to Hernando County. So pretty much all the mid-Florida territory I cover in conjunction with the fellow that handles the Tampa office, CJ Castro, and the fellow that handles Brevard County, Lonnie Kayama, who also handles Osceola County. So the programs are the same. The federal certifications, once you come in and start interacting with us, we may have a different approach to how we help you, and that's what hopefully will come across today when we do this presentation. So I'm trying to move to slide 2, if this thing allows me to move. Okay, so here we are. So you can see in here on the top portion of the slide, the areas where we provide assistance, which I mentioned, and then on the bottom portion of the slide, the partners that we work with. SBA partially fund the operation of these partners. The Florida Small Business Development Center, they have 40 centers throughout the state. SCORE has a similar amount of smaller offices. SCORE is a group of retired volunteers, so they're a nonprofit entity, and basically I'm getting into that age where when I was younger, I used to think that senior people had no value, but in reality, you know, we have been around the block 1, 2, 3, several times. So we have seen these things in the economy sometimes moves in cycles, and some of the cycles repeat. And then when we see something that looks familiar, then we already go back into the memory archives and we can see ways that we can deal with the situation. So the SCORE people can offer that advice to you, so they can be an ideal mentor if you desire one for your company. And then we have women business centers in the Atlantic coast and in the West Coast. We don't have one in Central Florida. We're trying to raise awareness and also raise awareness and funding within a federal agency so that they could give monies to a local entity so they can be the host for a program. But basically the programs are the same. We don't discriminate based on race or gender, religious preference, or political affiliation. So if you see a women business center, if you're a male, you can go in there and you'll be treated the same. The programs may be tailored towards women, but in reality, an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. Same thing with a federal contractor is a federal contractor. So the first topic here is the question that everybody asks is, you know, I get approached a lot of times by people that want to certify their business. And the first question that I ask them is, why do you want to certify your business? What is it that you're seeking with the certification? And some individuals, they respond that, hey, I belong to an underrepresented group. I'm a minority, or I'm a woman, or I'm a veteran, or I'm this and that and the other, and I want to take advantage of the certification because I want to belong to a group, but I also want to get preferential treatment when I go and pursue contracts. So there are basically two categories of business certifications that we deal with. There's some government-backed certifications that make your business eligible to win certain federal and governmental contracts. In some counties, they don't have a minority ordinance, so participation by minorities is diluted. Other counties have a mandated participation goal, just like we have at the federal level. So if you happen to be based in a county that doesn't have one, you can still participate. It's just that they won't lump you in one area called minority businesses, but they will make every single potential possible effort to give you an opportunity to compete. So don't think that they don't want you to compete. And then the private sector has a number of other similar certifications. We have an entity that is represented at the National Entrepreneur Center, which is called the Florida State Minority Supplier Development Council. But then I found that there are several organizations that may make use of their own or the national certification, like the hotels, the parks, major construction companies, et cetera, et cetera. So the certifications basically are a way to open a door so that you can get a seat at the table, and then it's up to you to comply with whatever the buyer is seeking, whether it's pricing or quality of product or whatever else that they have on the schedule that day. So SBA offers several types of business certifications, and as I mentioned, we have certifications for minorities. The 8A certification is a certification for minority. We have certifications for women. We have a women-owned small business certification. There's a certification for service-disabled veterans that is not managed by SBA, and I may have some people in here in the audience who may want to learn more about it. I didn't put them in here because I just wanted to focus on the ones that we manage, that we have statutory responsibility. And then we have a certification for businesses that are located in specific census tracts. When the U.S. Census is conducted, some data on economic activity and unemployment is collected, and then the SBA gets that data from the U.S. Census, and we use that to populate the maps for that particular certification, which is called HUBZone, historically underutilized business zones, and I'll address that down the road. So the SBA, in the mission where we deal with certification and procurement assistance, we also provide procurement assistance to the agencies. So to do that, the Federal Acquisition Regulation mandates that all the agencies carve out and reserve opportunities for certain sectors of the small business universe. And the goals that we currently have in the Federal Acquisition Regulation, we track those goals, and we come up with something that is called the Procurement Scorecard, and we publish this. This is available online. You can see the link on the bottom. And we publish this, and these accomplishments are briefed to all the senior leadership for all the different agencies and the senior leadership for Congress and our government. And so we have goals for prime contracting achievement and subcontracting achievement. We focus most on prime contracting because we feel that when you are a prime, you're in the driver's seat and you get the most opportunity to experience everything that is related to doing a contract, from managing the resources, managing the money, doing the proposals, negotiations, et cetera, et cetera. So the goals that the Federal Acquisition Regulation calls for, 23% of all the contract dollars on the visible budget, because keep in mind that there's an invisible budget that many times we don't hear about. On the visible budget, 23% of that has to go to small business. Contracts have to be let to small businesses to become the primes. And if you can look at the table here for 2018, and this is the data that was published for the year that ended in September 2018, because the federal government is always 1 year behind. So for the goal was 23% and the achievement was 25%. So small businesses in general were able to get their piece of the pie, and we exceeded, the government exceeded. The other category below that is women-owned businesses, which carries a 5% goal on the Federal Acquisition Regulation. And you can see that the accomplishment was 4.75, so we fell below. Small disadvantaged business is another name for what we now know as the 8A Business Development Program. That carries a 5% goal amount, and the accomplishment was 9.65%, so we over-exceeded that. So we don't have a problem with the 8A firms getting sufficient work to be able to meet the expectations of the law. Service-disabled veterans, 3%. And by the way, thank you for your service. I'm very proud that I'm one of yours. I served in the Army and then in the Air Force. Not in the Army Air Force, Army Air Corps, because I'm not that old. I served afterwards. So the goal is 3%, and the actual accomplishment was 4.27%, so that we did pretty well. And then the last category on the prime contracting is historically underutilized business zones, HUBZones, where the goal was 3% and we only did 2%. So those areas in which we didn't accomplish a goal for the next fiscal year are going to be the areas of additional emphasis for the contracting officers. And we feel that this information could be useful for you if you happen to be in one of those categories, so that when you have a discussion with a buyer at the federal level, you may try to inquire or redirect the conversation to those goals to see how you, as a small business, for example, that could be a woman-owned small business or a HUBZone business, how can you help them meet those goals? Of course, you know, the contracting officers, they don't want to hear the first thing goals. They want to see and they want to hear about your capability to be able to perform the work on time, on schedule, and on budget. But that's another area. The goal accomplishment is another area where you can determine whether the agency has met the goals, or whether this particular fiscal year the agency is going to place additional emphasis to recruit more companies that can work under that particular category. So the SBA, we have been tasked with the Congress to keep a database, a national database for certifications that the agencies can come to and verify the status of those entities that have been certified, and also for you to apply for certification. In this case, we created something called certify.sba.gov, which you can see on the slide, and it's a free website for you to access. You can today, if you're not already registered, you can create an account and get a user ID and password and see what's inside in there. And then when you're ready to start your certification process, you can go ahead and get started. Currently, we have the 8A program, the certification, the formal certification is already inside of Certify, to the point where you can, once you come into the 8A program, your annual review, which is a program examination that we do on the eligibility of the firm to meet the program criteria on a yearly basis, it's going to be done through Certify. We also have the informal women-owned small business program, and I say informal because the SBA has been working to come up with rules and guidance for a formal women small business certification program, and that program was finally approved, and the final regulations were released within the last 90 days. And the 15th of July is the first day where there's a magical date, and the program starts transitioning on the 15th of July, and then on the 15th of October is the start date for the formal program. So transitioning means for the women-owned small business that if you're already in the certified database on the what's called the women-owned small business repository, we are telling you should have received an email telling you to download all your files and have the information ready, so that when the program opens for certification on October 15th, then you can upload the documents, and then you can proceed with the actual formal certification. The SBA decided that we're not going to grandfather women-owned small businesses that have been in the program. The rationale for that is the General Services Administration, the various Inspector Generals for GSA, the SBA, Office of Management and Budget, and others have detected a lot of fraud. So rather than to allow someone by grandfathering the file, we're going to put everybody through the test of fire again, and that's going to be on October 15th. So I'll address that a little bit later in the presentation. And then we plan to include the HUBZone certification on the Certify sometime later this year. Because of the COVID-19, all of the implementation to move the HUBZone program, we were doing some testing and some trial and error. All those efforts went towards the disaster program. My programmers up in headquarters, they started to work with the economic injury disaster loan database. And so most of the resources were diverted to other higher priority things, which were the pandemic. So as a result, the HUBZone program is not going to come online this summer, effective 1 June, as we have predicted last year. So it's going to be later on the year, or perhaps first part of 2021. So the first program that we have here is called the 8A Business Development Program. And this program was developed in the and implemented in the late 60s to help small firms owned by socially and economically disadvantaged persons to grow and become sustainable. The idea was that we wanted to build a generation of small businesses that were able to compete in the free marketplace without having the government holding their hand every single step of the way. So when you come into the 8A program, and the people that have come into the 8A program, they have used that as a stepping stone to develop their company. So the SBA focuses on business development. Your focus may be on contract acquisition, and that's something that sometimes we have to reconcile to be able to ensure that you understand where we're coming from. And we'll try to do as best as we can to help you develop your company by putting you in a position where you can receive a contract. But if you don't receive a contract, the SBA will create opportunities for you to receive training in business management or marketing, and we will create the opportunities for you to be either in the same room or in the same database with other like companies, like other 8As or other companies that may complement your capabilities, so that then you can decide whether you want to build a team and you can joint venture with that other company to pursue a contract. And then the SBA will use the 8A database, and we have something where we have individuals that are embedded with some procurement functions, and those individuals, they market all of the certifications basically, but the 8A, HUBZone, women-owned services, they will pretty much have the same on a pecking order. They're at the same level, and the agency decides which one they want to use. But the 8A program is the one that has the closest relationship with the SBA, because we assign a specialist that interacts with the company for 9 years, and we facilitate a lot of the business development activity. So the benefits of the 8A program, of course, there's that 5% government-wide prime and subcontracting goal. When you come into the 8A program, we commit, it's a two-way street, it's a two-way contract. So when you, after you are accepted, you apply online, you get accepted, you get an email saying, welcome to the program. Now, because of the geographical location of your company, you're going to be serviced by, let's say, for example, you're in Orange County, so you're going to be serviced by the North Florida District. The next step is for the North Florida District. Once we become aware that you are in the program, then we'll reach out to you. We'll introduce you to the supervisor for business development, and he'll assign a business opportunity specialist, which is going to be your facilitator. The first thing that the business opportunity specialist will do is they will send you a link so you can download or produce your own copy of your 8A business plan, because that's a requirement under the regulations that within the first 30 days we have to review your business plan. And then the second thing that person is going to do, they're going to invite you to either physically come or do a virtual orientation, because we need to explain the rules of the game, the expectations, and we need to ask and answer any questions that may be unclear to you. We have some people that move very fast and they never read into the detail of the program, but they just want to get certified, and they come into the program and they don't know that this is about selling to the federal government. They assume that we're going to give them the contracts. So we set some ground rules. We train you. We'll tell you about everything that we do, and then we'll tell you our expectations, and then you tell us your expectations, and we'll try to reconcile and harmonize so that we're we can better communicate and work as a team. So as a participant in the 8A program, the regulations that guide your participation, 13 CFR 124, Code of Federal Regulations, Section 124, and FAR 19.8, we spell out some conditions where the 8A participants are become eligible for sole source contracts and competitive set-asides just for 8A firms. But there's specific thresholds that you have to, the contract has to meet to be able to be offered to you, for the contracting officer to make that offer to you as an 8A participant as a sole source contract. And then anything above those sole source contracts, which are $4 million for supplies and services and $7.5 million for manufacturing, anything above that amount needs to be competed if there are any other 8As that are interested in that requirement. If we have any Alaskan Native Corporation or Native American individuals that are pursuing certification as such, those entities, when they come into the program, we have special rules and they have higher thresholds. There was a recent change to an acquisition rule where the SBA processed the rule change where the Department of Defense can do sole source awards for Alaskan Native Corporation, Native Hawaiian organizations, and others up to $100 million. So the typical $4 million threshold doesn't apply if you are an ANC, Alaskan Native Corporation, Native Hawaiian organization, and other tribes control development corporation. The 8A firms have the opportunity to join with other firms and create joint ventures or participate in mentor project relationships to compete for federal government contracts. And this is something that in our district we have been pushing a lot of the participants over the last 3-4 years, because we feel that if you have half of the solution, if you build a team with someone else that has the other half, then you can present a better solution to the government, so your probabilities of getting a contract are a lot better. And also it helps you build capability, because you may look at your partner and then you can see how they approach a certain situation or certain technology, and then you can imitate and emulate. So the SBA also adjudicates anything that has to do with a protest of eligibility for 8A contracts. So we have a function within headquarters that has some administrative judges, and that's their role, to adjudicate not only for the 8A program, but we pretty much do that for small businesses, the certifications that we manage within SBA. So the 8A program is a limited duration program. It's a 9-year program, and we expect that during those 9 years, you will maintain your eligibility. And the rules are clear, and again, that's why the orientation is so critical. When you come in, we'll tell you, this is what we expect you to do, and this is how we expect to see your company. For example, there's a rule dealing with economic disadvantage, that if you exceed the economic disadvantage, then the SBA may feel that you're not economically disadvantaged, and that's a mandatory condition that you need to exhibit to participate in the 8A program. There may be some conditions involving control of the company. I've met some individuals that come into the 8A program where they're 100% owners of the company, and then a year down the road they decide that they want to sell stock because they want to raise some money, and then they make the mistake of selling a controlling interest, and now they don't have the minimum 51% control over the company, and that impacts their eligibility. So it's the 9 years for us are broken down into two tiers, developmental and transitional. The developmentals are years 1 through 4, where you can do and catch as many fish and as many contracts as you want. In years 5 through 9, we have specific language and regulations where the SBA has to prepare your company to transition back to the free marketplace, but the idea is that when you transition, you have learned enough tricks and enough skill sets that you can stand and compete on your own, because you were able to do that while the government was holding your hand. And now you've learned, this is how we negotiate, this is how we do the pricing proposals, this is how we approach the federal buyers, and this is how we develop a team, and this is how we do this, and this is how we do that. And ideally, this is something that you learn and then you keep repeating within your company. I've seen some companies that make the mistake that they have one individual that they call the business development person, and that's the only person that gets trained on any of those skill sets that the SBA is trying to develop in your company. That individual decides one day that he's going to go with your competition because he gets 5 cents more an hour, and boom, then you're left adrift on a big ocean with no direction, because the person that knew how to navigate your boat went with the competition. So that's something that we address and that we try to look at every year or more often, because some of us meet with the companies more often. When I had a portfolio, I had about 60 companies, and I was pretty visible in their business operations. I asked questions. I helped with some issues where they wanted to pursue specific opportunities. So I used that opportunity for me to do some training, to get to know their key decision makers, to review their business plan, to make comments on the business plan, look at the marketing strategy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm saying is that your business opportunity specialist is going to be key in the development of your company. So to help us and to help you and to help the agency and the other agencies within the federal government, what the SBA did is that we standardized and we created something called partnership agreements, which are nothing more than memorandums of understanding, MOUs, and we have 47 of those where the agencies agree to use the 8A program in accordance with the Federal Acquisition Regulation Part 19.8. And one of the key features in there is that if they want to use an 8A participant, they have to make an offer to the SBA, to the Servicing District Office, where we verify that that participant is in good standing to receive the offer. And then if we accept the offer, then SBA becomes the prime contractor, but because that participant is in our program, we can sub it out to the participant. And then what we do is we respond to the offer letter by sending an acceptance letter in which we dictate some terms and conditions. One of the things that we dictate in there is that now the agency can talk directly and negotiate directly with the 8A participant, and all we want to see is a copy of the signed contract and any contract negotiations. But if the agency has any issues or the small business has any issues, one with the other, that they will let us know so that we try to mediate and resolve the issue. Of course, we're selfish. We want to make sure that if you are an 8A participant, that you maintain your eligibility throughout the process, because some agencies have very little patience and they will impact your performance record by giving you a negative rating, and we don't want that. So we want to be involved in not only in the qualification phase, but also in the operation phase. Although we're not here to tell you how to turn the screwdriver or to do certain things. We're just here to ensure that you're treated with the respect that you deserve as an 8A participant, and that the agency program is respected by other agencies. So the eligibility, these programs that I'm briefing today are only open to U.S. citizens. So if you're a legal permanent resident or any other type of foreign alien in the U.S., you don't qualify unless you are a U.S. citizen. So that's key for the presentation today. The 8A program is only open to socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, and I'll explain what that means, down the road. The owner of the firm has to unconditionally own at least 51% of the concern. We want to make sure that we talk to the big boss that owns and make decisions, and those decisions are binding. The control and management of the concern are exercised by someone on a full-time basis, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. If that person is working somewhere else, that is considered devotion to duty. And when we do the review for the initial application, we'll find that out, and then we'll ask, provide more information so that we can make a determination. We're always looking for individuals with good character, meaning that they're not debarred, suspended, in parole or probation. Any of those situations can prevent the contract to be performed, and every time that we allow a participant to get involved in a publicly funded contract with public money, there's an inherent risk that the contract is not going to be performed. So some of the contracting officers are very risk averse, and so we try to minimize the risk not only for them but for the SBA and also for the company. So the company needs to be registered and active in systems for award management. And that's something that if you're a client of PTAC, the PTAC can help you get in there, as well as developing your capability statement, getting you registered with the small business dynamic small page profile. And they may have other techniques and strategies and other resources that they can make available to you to help you become the best federal contractor ever. So in order for you to come into the program as an 8A firm, we're looking for firms that are a little bit more mature, that have at least 2 years operating as a business. So we're looking for 2 years of business history, tax returns, in what we consider a primary industry. And the primary industry is the area where, as a business, you generate the majority of your revenues. So if you cut grass, you paint, and you lay concrete, in one of those three, you may have a preponderance of activity where that's where you generate the most economic revenue. In that area where you generate the majority of your revenues, that's going to be your primary industry regarding, for us, the SBA. And that's how we use that information that you provide to us when you do the application. And that information then is used to compare you to other companies in the same industry to see how well or how bad are you doing compared to the average. And then we use that for other purposes when we do the statistical review of your company on a yearly basis. So we're looking for small businesses, and we have something called the Table of Size Standards, which is important when you apply, but also it's important when you receive a contract, because the SBA, one of the biggest issue with protest is that companies claim that, the company that is the apparent successful winner of a contract is not a small business because they have an ongoing relationship with a large entity. And that, of course, impacts the SBA size standards determination. So the criteria for all of the 8As is social disadvantage. And social disadvantage is defined as this persons who have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we go further, and the regulation allows us to presume social disadvantage if you're a member, a U.S. citizen, and a member of one of those following groups: Black American, Asian Pacific American, Hispanic American, Native American, Subcontinent Asian American. If you are not one of those, member of one of those groups, but you still feel that you have been socially disadvantaged, then you can build a justification based on something that we call preponderance of evidence. And preponderance of evidence is a legal concept that is used in the court system where you provide evidence that sustains a specific position, and you're able to convince the reviewer, and the court, you convince the judge, and the SBA, you convince our lawyers who are going to review your argument to ensure that you meet the criteria of the intent of the law as written by SBA. So we're not going to tell you, no, you can't because you're not a member. You still have an opportunity to submit a narrative with preponderance of evidence. I do recommend that you take the time to prepare something that makes sense. And the situation, as addressed in here in item II, number 2, says this situation must address personal experiences of substantial and chronic social disadvantage in American society, not in other countries. We have individuals that come from other countries and maybe that they were discriminated in South America and the UK and the Philippines, but we don't care about that. We care about what happened when you touched ground in the U.S. and you became a U.S. citizen. Have you been discriminated? Then state the discrimination, state the facts. If you have witnesses, you have affidavits, and you have any other documentation that you can offer, that will help you justify your case so that when my reviewers, my lawyers, and I have 2 levels of lawyers that make revisions, if they recommend approval, more than likely it's going to be approved. The other criteria deals with economic disadvantage, which is the ability to compete in the free enterprise system, which has been impaired due to diminished capital and credit, and I'm economically disadvantaged. I admit I don't have $10 million in my bank account. But the SBA, what we do is we use a more objective criteria. We ask you, as part of the forms and the electronic applications, to fill out a personal financial statement in which you address and identify assets and liabilities. So the number that I show here in red, $750,000, if you look at the bottom, that's going to be effective 15 July 2020. The current number is $250. That's the number that we have been playing up until the last months, and then the rules for the 8A social disadvantage were harmonized with the new rules for the women-owned small business economic disadvantage. So in order for the SBA to use the same definition across the board, they decided to increase to 750, but that number is going to be effective on the 15th of July. So if you submit your application today or before the 15th of July, the number is going to be $250,000. A lot of the people have issues making that number, so the SBA provides for some statutory exclusions, and we allow you, or we will remove from the calculation the equity in the primary residence, equity in the business. The primary residence for us is the place where you live. So if you have 20 or 5 houses and you live and you have the biggest value of the house is the one in Winter Park, but you live in Apopka, your primary residence is in Apopka. And the SBA is going to use that value, and that's what we're going to exclude from the calculation. So we have a value which is called the adjusted net worth. In this case, the slide says 750, and that's the value that is going to be effective 15 July. So today, if you were to apply today, the value will be $250,000. We also have some additional economic disadvantage tests because the regulations have been supplemented over the years. We have a number of cases that have gone before the Office of Hearing and Appeals. Administrative judges have made decisions, have created precedents, and those precedents have been documented in the regulations. So the specific reference is 13 CFR 124.104, and as I mentioned, the adjusted net worth on the prior page is 750 or 250 if you apply today. The AGI, the adjusted gross income, comes from your IRS Form 1040. From the first page on the bottom, you see something that says adjusted gross income. And I kind of remember there were some protests a number of years back where there were a number of people that were complaining about the 99 percenters and the 1 percenters, because the SBA felt that if your AGI exceeded more than $250,000 back then, I think it was like 10 years ago, then you were a 1 percenter, not a 99 percenter. So the SBA was challenged in one of those rules, and the administrative judge came up with a decision that became a precedent. And so for the 8A program, the adjusted gross income before 15 July under the old rule was $250,000, but now under the new rule that, again, is harmonized with the women-owned small business economic disadvantage criteria, is now $350,000. And then the last thing that we look at economically is we have a number of individuals that have multiple assets. I had one individual that had been in the military, and every time that he got a pay raise, he bought a house. So he had a number of assets, so initially when we tried to come into the 8A program, his net worth was through the roof. And so happened that he waited, and then the economy took a downturn. That was in the mid 2005, 2006 timeframe, and all his properties went down in value. So when everything went down in value and you add them all together, he was below the $250,000 threshold, and he was able to come into the program. And at that time, the fair market value of all the assets, the maximum that you could have to just come into the 8A program was $4 million. And again, this value has been harmonized with the Women-Owned Small Business Economic Disadvantage criteria, and now you have to be under $6 million, which for someone like me will be a lot of money if I have $6 million in assets. But for the 8A program, that's what they consider economic disadvantage. If at any time during your stay in the program, the 9 years, you exceed those values, $750,000, $350,000, and $6 million, then the SBA may presume that you're no longer economically disadvantaged and may take actions to either early graduate you or terminate you from program participation. So that's something that when you come into the program, you need to manage how you handle your money. Some people take money and they put it in their pocket. If you put it in your pocket, it counts as an asset. But if you take the money and you put it and pay your mortgage, it's discounted, because I show you on the previous page that we have statutory exclusions. And that's a mistake that some people make, because they're not really awake when we're doing these presentations, and they don't know how the program examiners review their economic situation. But that's something that we can talk after the fact if you need. So we look at good character, and here we look at the opposite. What shows a lack of good character, and basically any negative information when we run your penal record, or if we look at PACER on the court system, and you have any liens or lawsuits, or you have been accused of lying or lack of business integrity or something like that, that for us, the SBA, that's a lack of good character. So we're not going to automatically say, we don't want you here. We're going to give you an opportunity to explain, and then the lawyers are going to get that explanation, and they make a decision, this is a good risk for the government, and no, this is not a good risk for the government. Failure to pay financial obligations, student loans, child support, taxes, disaster loans, and any other like that could be a reason for the program to deny access to the 8A certification, because again, that's specifically spelled out that way in the regulations. However, if you owe taxes, there was already a case 20 years ago where one of the larger defense contractors that was building planes owed the federal government over $1 billion in taxes, but they were the most favorite company that the government wanted to use to build some tankers for the Air Force. And the solution was, if that company gets into a payment plan where they're trying to make attempts to, in good faith, to bring their account down, then the government will allow them to proceed and receive that contract, or in this case, proceed and be approved for 8A participation. So what I'm saying is, if you owe taxes, that's not the end, that's not the kiss of death. However, you need to get into a payment plan, so you need to reach out to the IRS and get discuss and negotiate with them to create a payment plan. And then what you submit to the SBA is a copy of the document where you negotiated, where it's accepted by both parties, and usually you submit evidence of at least one payment that you have made, which indicates that the account is current. And then finally, if you have been told that your criminal record was expunged for whatever reason, and we have one individual that went to Gainesville, to the university, and I guess when in one of the weekends he was caught driving under the influence because he had some of that funny weed, and then he had some influential people in his family, and his record was quote unquote expunged. Guess what? It wasn't expunged for the federal government. So when he applied, he marked on the form, I never had any encounters with the law. So when the SBA found that he did have a criminal record, they assumed that he had lied on the form, and then they almost didn't accept him into the program. The guy had to not only write a good explanation, but I think he also had to ask for forgiveness on the paperwork. So if you're in doubt, report it to the SBA and allow our lawyers to make a decision. Nothing is the worst thing that could happen for the SBA regarding someone with a lack of good character is someone that has committed fraud against the government. We don't want to deal with a situation like that, but anything else can be explained. And again, that's not me, that's the way that our legal system allows you to be given the opportunity to explain your situation. But there's some crimes that are so severe that no matter how many explanations you give, the SBA will not work with you. The other thing that we look for is the potential for success, and we have a test to measure potential for success. So the ability to compete in the federal marketplace is one thing, but the ability to perform the contracts is another. So the government is concerned, and has been concerned over the last 50 years, that if we admit a company who has not been in operation for at least 2 years, is not mature enough, if we give them a contract, they're going to start fumbling, trying to find their way around, and maybe they're not up to the level where they can start work right away because they need to hire a lot of people, they need to get additional money, they need to get equipment, they need to get supplies. Maybe the owners don't know all of the things that they need to know to be able to perform our contract. So when we review your application, we're looking for at least 2 years of full, immediate application of revenues in your primary NEX code. We need to see 2 years of revenues, and the proof of that is proof is in the pudding, which business tax returns. We need to see financial capability, capitalization, performance, bonding, manageable debt. If you're telling me that you have a construction company and you don't have bonding, that means that maybe you're doing very little jobs, but when you go out and bid on a government contract for $25, $50 million, bonding will be required because there's such a thing called the Miller Act that requires you to bond any project over $150,000. We also look at the managerial and technical capacity. Lack of managerial technical capacity could indicate that you may be the owner, but your employee is telling you how to do certain things. In other words, your employee may control you, and therefore you're not in control, which is one of the attributes that we're looking for. Not only do you have to be socially and economically disadvantaged, but also you have to be in control of the daily operations. And control means that what you say goes, because you have the utmost authority and the licenses to prove that. So we're looking for education, experience, and training of the CEO and other managers. And then we're looking for also qualifications to perform on federal contracts. It doesn't necessarily have to be a federal contract because, you can lay concrete on the private sector as well. As long as you have the ability to perform and you perform those contracts to the best of your ability, on time, on schedule, low cost or below budget, et cetera, and there's no negative feedback that was provided by whoever hired you, the government's going to assume that you have the ability to do the work, and it's going to say, okay, this person has potential for success. But if you don't have relevant experience and you claim that you have a PhD in nuclear physics and you can build nuclear weapons, and we're looking for turnkey nuclear bomb, I don't think the government's going to give you the contract. They're going to go with the more experienced firm, and that's something that we want to review, that you have those qualifications, because the worst thing that could happen is that we allow you in the program and you're sitting in the bench for 9 years, and then you'll be frustrated because you never got an opportunity to get into the real game. The coach never put you in because you didn't have the qualifications. So we want to make sure that we bring people into the program that have the right skill sets, that have the right knowledge and the right desires. And at the end of the day, for you, this is a way to create revenue and get more money in your pockets. For us, it's a way to train your company to be able to compete in the free marketplace. So if you don't have the 2 years operating as a business, but you do have the required business management expertise, technical expertise, capital or access to capital, successful performance, and the ability to mobilize equipment, facilities, equipment, requirements, etc., you can ask for a 2-year waiver. And there's no form in the application that says 2-year waiver, but you need to keep in mind that you need to put an additional sheet of paper or several sheets of paper where you explain all those 5 topics in there: business management expertise, technical expertise, adequate capital, successful performance, et cetera, et cetera. You need to use the concept that I mentioned, preponderance of evidence, to be able to write a narrative on each one of those topics and say, yes, I do have business management experience. And let me tell you, this is what I did from the time that I left high school. Boom, 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 boom. And then you can build your case. And again, this is going to be reviewed by our lawyers. Our lawyers review cases from all over the U.S. and the territory, so they have a wider perspective. And if they made a decision that allows someone in Guam to come into the 8A program with a similar argument, guess what? The argument created a precedent that's going to be applied to your case, and you'll be able to come in. But you need to be generous in the writing that you submit to us and tell us everything that we need to see, because otherwise we can't read your mind. So we also look at ownership. 51% is basically the lowest ownership that you can have to be in control unconditionally of your business. And then the unconditional aspect of it is we can look at your legal formation documents, the articles of organization, stock ledger, articles of incorporation, and usually those have their charters and the bylaws. There may be some minutes that you do on a yearly basis, because in the state of Florida, it's a requirement that you do minutes every year when you do, usually at the beginning of the year, and then you document all the critical decisions. And one of the minutes, there should be a decision that we're going to pursue the 8A certification, or we're going to get a loan, or I'm going to give a loan from my personal assets, my money as a business owner. I'm going to give a loan to the company, and these are the terms. I'm going to repay myself I'm going to take a draw, or I'm going to do whatever. So all of those things can and need to be documented in your minutes. And if you have any doubts, the best resource that we have available is the one hosting this event today, the Small Business Development Center, and you can sit down with them and ask them to take you by the hand on how to properly manage a business in the state of Florida. So we're looking at control and management. Each type of business structure may have some specific requirements. The one thing to keep in mind here is all the documents, they need to be in black and white. So they need to be written and signed by whoever happens to own the company and the officers or whatever. And then the documents need to unequivocally state that you, the socially disadvantaged individual, you control the company, you control the votes if there's a vote by a board, and you manage the company on a day in and day out basis. So we'll look at the agreements, who signs the agreements, who signs the contracts, who negotiated the contracts, if there are any board meeting minutes for the company as required by the Florida state legal statutes. So we'll look at all of that documentation. If that documentation doesn't exist, guess what? You know, my reviewers are going to ask you, please provide a copy of your board minutes for the last 4 years. And you'll go into, more than likely, I mean, I've seen a lot of companies that go into pencil whipping mode and they generate those records. But that's something that you should discuss with the SBDC before you decide to embark on this venture to pursue the 8A certification, because you want to make sure that your business is properly put together, the infrastructure, you have all the right documentation to be able to operate and come into the program, and to withstand a protest, because you know someone can protest, and because you're missing some critical document, the judge that is reviewing the protest may side against you because your business is not properly, doesn't meet the intent of the law. So we do have some firms that are not eligible to come into the 8A program. We have brokers, defined in red below as concerns that don't add material value to the item or service being supplied, which does not take ownership or possession or handle the item. So if you buy from, let's say, Amazon, and you take, you know, you place the order and Amazon ships directly to the end user, and then all you get is your percentage, you're basically not creating value added. You're not creating jobs in the eyes of the SBA according to this program, so therefore you're not eligible to come into the program. So you have to, if you are really interested in coming into the 8A program, you need to look and make some changes. If you're debarred or suspended from doing business from the federal government, you're not eligible. If you are a nonprofit organization, this program unfortunately is not open to you. If you are under a franchise agreement, we may need to review the franchise disclosure document, because some franchises, the franchisors, don't allow you enough flexibility and with independence of thought so that you can make your own business decisions. They want you to dress one way, they want to greet the people one way, they do certain things. The meal, if you know the French fries are not sold within 5 minutes, they got to be thrown in the trash, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So some of those franchises, they exert a lot of control on the franchisees. Others, they allow you to be all that you can be, and all you do is share the number or the name, or they give you something in return. But again, all of that is spelled out in the franchise disclosure document, and the SBA may have to review that before we make a final decision to allow you in. So once you come into the 8A program and you use up your 9 years, or you decide to quit early, you can only participate as a business or an individual once. If you sell your business while the program, the business is active in the 8A program and the 9 years have not expired, then the new owner has the opportunity to come in and finish the 9 years, but that new owner has to reapply and has to meet the conditions for socially and economically disadvantaged and control, et cetera, just like you did. So the application, it's online. We don't take paper anymore. There may be some paper forms floating around. You could, if you find them, use them to organize your thoughts and to see what other information you need to have. But when it comes time to input your submission, you need to fill out the actual application online, and that doesn't allow you to download it. It's an application that'll ask you a number of questions, and that's how the all forms were translated into the electronic format, by asking you questions, and then the question when you answer may fill multiple forms, and at the end of the process you may end up with the forms that you need to then sign electronically, and then you can download and keep a copy if you want. You need to collect, scan, and upload other documentation. When we look at tax returns, we may look at justifications for the 2-year waiver, we may look at the preponderance of evidence, we may look at the business history, we may look at your CV, your resume, business resume, professional resume, or information on your key officers. You may have to scan and upload that information. And again, we'll give you the opportunity to sign everything electronically. If you are in the process of submitting an application and you expect to receive an email from us in your regular email, more than likely you won't, because SBA is very concerned with the security of the information that you put in our system. So what we are going to tell you is that within the certify.sba.gov, once you get into your profile, you'll have a dashboard, and within the dashboard you'll have an area for messages, and you have to check on a regular basis because the SBA may send a message to you within Certify, and the message may be stuck in your dashboard. You're waiting for something to come into your regular Gmail address, and never comes. And if the SBA doesn't get the information that they need, they may give you 10 days, they may give you 20 days, they may give you 5 days, they may say something, and if you don't answer, then the SBA assumes that you're not interested in pursuing and completing your certification, so they may drop your case. Okay, so this the slide addresses the timeline. So the SBA, once you submit the application online, we have 15 days to review and determine if the application is complete and tell you about any deficiencies that we need to see. We can do that faster than 15 days. Sometimes it's longer than 15 days. It depends on the time of the year. This time of the year in the summer, there's a lot of people that are waiting to get their application in because they want to get on the end of the year purchasing bandwagon. But when you do that, what happens is that depending on the workload and the number of individuals that I have available in the certification office in DC, we have a certification office in Philadelphia, and then we have a certification office, excuse me, in Sacramento. And depending on who's available, whether they're on leave, how many cases they have, if we have a pandemic, et cetera, it may take longer than just the 15 days. So if you don't get anything from within the first 15 days, you can send query help at Certify, or you can let me or your PTAC counselor know, and then we can raise the flag from our end to say, hey, you know, what's going on? You know, how come this application hasn't been processed? So if the application isn't complete, the SBA is not going to start the clock for the 90 days that we have to review and approve or disapprove your application. So we'll keep giving you 10 days or 15 days to provide documentation until we feel that we have all the documentation to be able to make a determination. And then at that time, we'll start the clock, we'll start the 90 days, and we'll send an email saying the application is complete. We'll start processing it now. So once the 90 days or within the 90 days are over, then the Associate Administrator for Business Development will reach out to that applicant saying you have been approved or denied. And if you were denied, they will say, you know, these are the reasons. More than likely you already know, because someone may have called you on the phone saying you don't qualify because of this and that and the other. So if you receive a denial letter and you want to be reconsidered, you have the ability to appeal within 45 days. And if you decide not to seek reconsideration, then if you go beyond the 45 days, then you have to wait the full 12-month period, calling off until you can reapply. If the issue is size, because someone says, hey, you know, you're dancing too many times with the same other company, and that other company is a large entity, then you may reapply immediately as long as you explain, and the explanation is approved by the lawyers. So if you decide to appeal, maybe that's the moment where you need to lawyer up, and you need to find a legal representative that can understand all of the nuances of the SBA regulations, and they can be your best advocate to protect your rights before the agency. Sometimes we have things that the agency does in a certain way that some people feel that are arbitrary and capricious. Other times we have a lot more information, or other times we get information from third-party sources. So each case is different. And in many cases, I mean, you may think that you're doing the best thing for your company by defending yourself, but sometimes, you know, the best thing that you could do is find legal advice and allow that other individual, if they understand the SBA regulations and have done this before, allow that other individual to represent you, and maybe you'll get some satisfaction in the way that you expect. So we do training on a regular basis through SCORE, SBDC, PTAC, and the Women Business Centers. And then when you get the slides, just visit those links in red, Stover, Synergy, Conex, and Coley Learning, because those are specialized courses that we pay top dollar. They're webinar based for 8A participants and small businesses that qualify, that are registered in SAM, that indicate they're socially disadvantaged. And then that opens the door for you to take that training. And if you want to come into the 8A program, my recommendation will be that you come in already ready to run, because if you come into the program and then you start opening books when you get accepted, you're going to waste some time, and time is money. I've heard so many people complain that the 9 years go very fast, and that they want to do, they wish they could have had a better use of the time while over there. And then our district, we have a number of events throughout the region. We work with other organizations. This month, we're doing the Florida 8A Alliance annual virtual conference. And we do events with pretty much everyone and their brother. So these are some of the reasons for denial or rejection. Unable to substantiate the documentation, whether it be tax returns or any other documentation that you provide to the SBA. There may be devotion to duty, meaning that you're working while you're claiming that you're running your business full-time, you're earning monies from another business, and that to us is a devotion to duty, and we're going to ask you which one do you put more emphasis on. So there's a number of things in here, and we address these things, especially when you do one-on-one. My recommendation would be that if you're planning to apply for the 8A, that working through your local PTAC can help you, because they get an opportunity to review the case. If they feel that there's something that is beyond their knowledge, sometimes they reach out to me, and I can become part of that team that reviews the application to make sure that we get the best result out of the whole experience. So that's the end of the presentation. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a 2-second break to take a sip of Coke.
All right, well, Ed, I'm going to jump in because we did have a couple of clarification questions.
Okay.
When you were discussing the fact that the program was open only for U.S. citizens, we did have a question come in to say that would a green card permanent resident of the USA qualify as a U.S. citizen or not?
A green card U.S. citizen, permanent resident has not sworn an oath to the flag and is not considered a U.S. citizen yet.
Okay. And then we had a question concerning on the dollar limits. It says, the question was where you said something needed to be under $350,000 per year. And it said, under $350,000 per year or total. So I'm not entirely sure.
That's the adjusted gross income.
I guess it doesn't specify, so.
So on that slide that deals with the adjusted gross income, that comes in from the IRS Form 1040 that the individual fills out. And then that's on the bottom of the first page, that's the AGI, and that amount used to be $250, now effective 15 July is going to go up to $350. So it's got to be below that amount. Otherwise, if it exceeds, that person does not suffer economic disadvantage.
Okay, and then there was one more question about the 2-year waiver, but you kind of covered that section after the question came in, so that one has probably been answered.
Okay.
All right, so you are free to continue.
Thank you. So the next presentation deals with the historically underutilized business zone contracting program, which was created in the 1990s to help individuals in specific communities that were suffering from high unemployment and other conditions that impacted the economic makeup of that area. And this was put in place by the Clinton administration. And the idea was that by using federal contracts directed towards individuals and businesses that were located in those zones, we can increase employment, which empowers the individuals. And once you increase the employment, those individuals surrounding that business may get employed. There's more disposable income. Also stimulates other companies to get next to those individuals, especially if they do manufacturing. And then also reduces crime and some of the other ailments that impact those economics that are suffering from economic disadvantage. So the program was called the Historically Underutilized Business Zones, HUBZones, HUBZones, and it's based on the U.S. Census data collections, and the governors have the ability to nominate zones in the state of Florida. They're called empowerment zones. And the HUBZone database used to change, was very fluid, but then 2 years ago, there was a change of the law that passed, freezes the database, and now every 5 years, it's when we change the database. So that means that when you go into one facility, you don't have to be concerned that the business is going to lose, the location is going to lose status, and that you're going to have to move somewhere else. You'll be there good for at least 5 years, or if something changes, then you'll know about it because you'll see other businesses popping up. If you're in downtown Orlando, you know the area between, Colonial Drive, I-4, and Livingston, which is called Paramore District. And the city also had a big project to remodel and improve that's called the Creative Village. So all of that area used to be a hub zone, but now that the Creative Village has been finished and is open, I don't know if it's been officially inaugurated or not, but once that village is open and all those jobs are collected with the census that is taking place this year, more than likely a big chunk of that area is going to not be considered a hub zone in the future. So if you happen to be located there, heads up, you need to be looking at other areas. We have hub zone areas around UCF because those areas where students reside mostly. Those students don't earn a lot of money because they're dedicated to studying. So therefore, when they look at the economic per capita income of those individuals, it's very low. So that ensures that an area is in the HUBZone program. And for example, the UCF incubator program, it's located in a HUBZone area. So if you happen to be a business in the UCF incubator, you should take advantage of the HUBZone designation to try to bring some contract activity to your company. So the hub zones are identified by basically when the U.S. Census 5-year or 10-year census is collected, and a census tract is defined here as a geographic region where, you know, the census people, they collect all kinds of information, how many people live here, how much money you make. They don't ask you some of those forbidden questions, where you're from, are you a citizen? No, they don't ask you that, but they want to see how many people have, you know, college degrees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that data makes its way into the census. They have a big blender up in DC, and they mix and match all the data, and they come up with some census tracts that then we translate into a map, and then you can see a physical graphical representation. We also have something called base closure areas, BRACs, base realignment and closure areas, that are federal public acts and laws that have been passed where those locations have to be granted specific special status to be able to withstand the demobilization and reuse into something else. So that, there's a number of laws in there. And then we also have governor designated areas. So the governor of Florida may decide that, hey, I have one area that has constant low economic numbers, high crime, and the mayor of the area, or the city mayor, or the county mayor, or my congressional representatives are telling me that I need to do something, so I want to nominate that for HUBZone. And if it nominates and that is approved by the SBA, then that area is added to the maps. So the maps look like this when you go to sba.gov/HUBZone, and then in here on the top, right under the SBA logo, says Orange County. What you do in there is you plug in the physical address of the business or the physical address of the individual that you are looking, and then on the right side where it says not qualified, you'll get a different color that says qualified, and then it allows you to print the map so you can save it. If you look at the middle of the slide, you can see a number of areas in gray. Those are the hub zones for Orange County. And the last count, we had about 46 or 47 designated hub zone areas for SBA. So within the county of Orange, there's plenty of places where if you're looking for this program, if you're looking for a place to have your base of operations, you may want to consider looking at the map before you sign that lease, so you can make sure that you are in a designated hub zone area. So so we identified the program, and then the maps, as I mentioned, are based on data that is collected and published by the U.S. Census. So the role of SBA is determining, well, we put together a set of regulations, and the regulations determine eligibility for the program. We maintain a list of qualified HUBZone firms, which is used in conjunction with Systems for Award Management, SAM, and the dynamic SBA Dynamic Small Business Profile. And then we also, like we did with the 8A program, we adjudicate on protest of eligibility because we have an administrative judge, and we want to make sure that they earn every penny of their almost $200,000 salary that they have every year. So the specifics for the program, if you're interested, you go sba.gov/HUBZone, or if you want to really dig into the specific step-by-step of the regulation, you can Google 13 CFR 126, and those are the specific section of the Code of Federal Regulations that deal with the historically underutilized business zone. As I mentioned, this is the map. So the benefits, when I started, I showed the procurement scorecard that said that there was a 3% prime contracting goal, and that we only have done on the prior year 2.2%. So there's a huge opportunity in there for agencies to use the HUBZone program. Sometimes they don't use the HUBZone program because they don't identify enough companies when they do market research that they can use that sell or buy or manufacture the products that they're trying to buy. So that's one thing. Other times, the companies that are in a HUBZone, they don't aggressively market their products or services. So if you are in a HUBZone and the contracting officers or the agency that has the money, they don't know that you exist, they're not going to buy from you. And that's something that when you become a client of PTAC and you sit down with them, they'll ask you a number of questions, and they'll try to prod and put you in a development program, so to say, so that you can learn how to effectively market your product or service to a federal agency, specifically to the agency that you're pursuing. Because again, if they don't know that you exist, they're not going to buy from you. The HUBZone program, besides the 3% prime goal, that also carries something that is called the 10% price evaluation preference, the PEP. And the PEP is nothing more than when you are participating in a bid that is, let's say, full and open, you're bidding against other small businesses, other HUBZones, and other larger businesses. and you are within 10% of the best price that the contracting officer is thinking of, that it's the best price for their agency, when you make the contracting officer at the beginning of the process, you make them aware that you are a HUBZone, and they're going to look at the certification in SAM and the dynamic small business search, and if you're within that 10% price, they can award to you, because the law says that they can then give you the award as a HUBZone entity. So that's something that many contracting officers don't know. We try to educate them on a regular basis. So there's a lot of contracting officers don't know about the program, or if they heard the program, they don't know the specifics. So sometimes you, as a small business entity that are participating in that particular certification, you need to take also the role of educator. You need to let them know, hey, you know, this is how the program works, and you can use me if I'm within that 10% of the lowest price that is acceptable to the government. So we do have a project officer in my district office in Jacksonville, Jay Choi, and that's his direct number. We do training on a regular basis. Headquarters does training, and they advertise the training dates, and they post the calling number and the access code for the webinar sessions online at sba.gov/HUBZone. So you have to be a small business to be eligible for the HUBZone program. You have to be owned and controlled on at least 51% by U.S. citizens, or CDC, Community Development Corporation, agricultural cooperative, or an Indian tribe. Again, U.S. citizens. Doesn't say green card holders, legal permanent residents, and that's part of the confusion that sometimes we have with the language of the regulations that is very specific. So the principal office has to be located within a designated HUBZone. That means that when you take the address for your principal office and you plug it in the map that I showed you before, it's going to show, yes, it's in a qualified HUBZone area. And then the other condition is 35% of your employees must reside in a HUBZone, not necessarily the same HUBZone as the business. So when you have that, then you meet the criteria, U.S. business, small business, U.S. citizen, 51%, main office, principal office in a designated HUBZone, 35% residing in a HUBZone. And then you can proceed to apply for the program. And we're not going to look for tax returns. We're not going to look for some of the other economic disadvantage criteria or social disadvantage criteria, because that's only for the 8A program, not for the HUBZone program. And now we used to recertify every 3 years, but now since the program is getting close to it's already a formal program, but it's getting stricter. Now we changed to the annual recertification, where once you are in the program, you're going to get a reminder, an email reminder that you need to recertify on at least on a yearly basis. So this is a definition that you need to keep in mind for an employee. Basically says that an employee for the HUBZone program doesn't mean someone. It implies someone that works a minimum of 40 hours per month. Month is the word here. So you can have a part-time person that works 10 hours a week. As long as they work 40 hours per month, they qualify as an employee according to the HUBZone definition. An employee is also shown in your payroll, or if you use a staffing company, they do payroll, but you have documentation that shows that the employee works for you and that you're paying those amounts. Usually you have to wait 90 days to, if you're starting your business and you have an employee, 90 days with those payroll documentation to evidence to the SBA that you met the criteria for the employment. But again, 35% of your employees. So if you have a small company, it's 2 of you, and 1 of you reside in the HUBZone, you have 50%. So you you're good to go. But the larger your company, then you have to keep in mind and play with the numbers. 33% doesn't cut it because it's got to be 35%. So if you do 35 or higher, you're okay. But if you do less than 35%, then you don't meet the criteria or the intent of the program for application. So we have some changes that were incorporated last year, where we allow we allow a clarification for 40 hours per month. It's asking you for a 4-week period immediately prior to a relevant date of consideration. But I would say when you work with the PEO, if you have a 90-day statement, it's even stronger for you. And if you have an employee that resides in a HUBZone at the time of certification, and that employee later on moves on outside of the HUBZone because they found property, they decided to move on and buy somewhere else, as long as they retain, as long as they're your employee, we'll give you credit for that person. So initially 35, you can go as low as 20%. So when you're submitting an offer, you will have to restate and recertify that you meet the criteria of the HUBZone program. And if you are at 35%, when you submit the offer and your levels drop below 35 but higher than 20% afterwards, no problem. But if you're less than 35% when you certify that you met the intent of the program, then that could be rationale enough for the contracting officer not to give you the contract if you get selected. So it's it's part of the playing with the regulations. So the principal office means the location where the greatest number of employees perform their work. And again, if you have a construction company, that may have one definition. If you have a program management company, that may have another definition. If you have an HR company, they may have another definition. That's why you have to look at the location. So if you have an HR company, usually the location where the greatest number of your employees perform their work is in your main office. But if you have a construction company, perhaps the largest majority of your employees are somewhere else. So this slide basically tries to tell you that a lot of the companies that are in the HUBZone program, they see the HUBZone as a long-term strategy. Maybe they don't qualify for 8A, maybe they're not women, maybe they're not veterans, so they want to remain HUBZone for as long as they can. So they have a long-term, they're very proactive, they focus their marketing, looking for HUBZone opportunities. They have their ear to the ground, trying to see if, and there is a HUBZone trade organization, and if the HUBZone trade, they become members, for example, and if they hear that there may be some significant changes to the HUBZone regulations, they try to get ahead of the change. And in some cases, ahead of the change means that if their zone is going to be removed from the HUBZone program, let's say 1 or 2 years down the road, and if they lease or rent, then they make a decision: do we want to stay here, or do we want to move somewhere else where we can then reapply and become HUBZone certified? Because, you know, at the end of the day, we exist as a company to make money. So for the principal office and 35% of the residency requirement, we have a term that is explained in the definitions in the regulations, 13 CFR 126, that is called attend to maintain, specifically 126.103, and means that you're making a substantive and documented effort to recruit individuals that reside in the HUBZone. Some people have told me in the past, oh, that's discrimination, but no, that means that you're doing targeted recruitment. So if you're looking for someone that your project requires, I don't know, using people that are short in height. That may be a requirement that you put in there when you try to recruit individuals, short in height. So the tall guy may feel discriminated, but in reality, you're not discriminating. You're targeting your offer to try to bring the resources that you can use in your company. So the bottom line is, a small business concern that has less than 20% of the employees reside in a HUBZone during performance of a contract has failed to maintain the HUBZone residency requirement, as I mentioned. So initially it's 35%, the lowest is 20%. Once you get the contract, you could perform at 20%, but you still got to demonstrate that you're trying to obtain to maintain by trying to do targeted recruitment. I mean, I've seen some people that they go to the university employment office, other individuals, they go to Monster.jobs, and other people, they go to the city, other people go to the county, but they have something documenting that the city, the county, Monster, the universities, they attempted to recruit individuals that reside in specific zones so they can maintain the number of HUBZone employees. So you need to verify eligibility. Again, size standard, the SBA programs are only available to small businesses that comply with the size standards. They're below the public size standards. The ownership, again, just like the other program, 51% seems to be the breaking number. If you own more than 51%, 51 or more, then you're the owner and controller of that business. If you own less, 50, let's say husband and wife, they do 50-50, then there's no clear ownership or majority of minority or majority of control. So if a husband and team happens, in the SBA, we have something that is called a transmutation agreement, where one of the owners transfers 1% to the other, so the other can become the majority owner, meet the 51%, and then can proceed ahead with certification. And the agreement says it's only for the 8A or HUBZone certification process, not for if they get divorced. And so some people don't like to do that because they're concerned that if they get divorced, they're going to lose, and that's not the intent of the form. Okay, so what do you need to submit to SBA to get certified as a HUBZone? So you need to submit a completed application, and this application is not within certified.sba.gov at this time because we have not finished the translation process. So it resides at the SBA General Login System, SBA GLS. And then, so there's a number of documents that you need to collect and present to SBA. And there may be some other information that you need to submit as part of the completed application for our reviewers to make a determination to determine if the company is in fact meeting the criteria for the program. So SBA may request documents that verify the applicant meets eligibility, program requirements, employment records and documentation showing the address of each HUBZone resident employee. Records that demonstrate residency include copies of driver's licenses, voter registration cards, and alternative documentation such as copies of leases, deeds, or utility bills, accompanied by signed statements explaining why the alternate documentation is being provided. So this is a place where you start your journey to become a HUBZone certified. It's called the SBA General Login System. That's an application that resides within an SBA machine, so you got to use that address below. You got to create an account and enter your data, and then our SBA security custodians will issue you a password. They may not respond right away. They have 24 hours to get back to you, but they'll get back to you with the right password so that you can log into your account. So once you are in the system, and you are granted access to the HUBZone application site. You will submit the documentation online. You'll print the documentation on the online documentation, and then you'll collect all the supporting documentation, the hard copy, and you'll put it together in the package, and you'll mail it to the SBA within 2 weeks. And the site will give you the address where you have to mail those forms to. And it will do, the documents will include documentation supporting ownership and control, site standards, business and personal tax returns, and compliance with HUBZone employment and principal office requirements. You maintain HUBZone status. You'll get an email requesting you to recertify within 30 days of anniversary date. And so you have to make sure that if the email from the GLS, because that's not going to come into to a secure mailbox, it goes to your regular email address, you got to make sure that it doesn't go into spam. So make sure that you add the SBA.gov domain to the addresses that you see in your inbox. And then the SBA will tell you, you know, we need to recertify, please submit this and this and this and this. And then if the contractor, once they receive their documentation, they have any questions, they'll reach out to you to ask for clarifications or any other documentations that they may need. So the SBA also does program examinations at least every 3 years. And then on a yearly basis, we try to do a no-notice visit. So in my case, for example, I work for the Jacksonville district, but I handle 5 counties. So those companies that are in the HUBZone visit spreadsheet for the fiscal year that fall in my counties, I have to do those visits. And basically what I go is I have a checklist that says, you know, is there a sign on the outside? Does it look like the space has been used? How many desks? How many phones? How many computers? Who did you talk to? Do you have a business card? Do you take any pictures? Does the space look occupied, et cetera, et cetera? Because my job there is not to be like a private investigator. My job is to make sure that the companies have a physical presence in the particular area, since their certification is tied to a geographical location. Price evaluation, I mentioned the price evaluation, how it affects a bid. And this slide in here explains that under the full and open competition, the contracting officer must deem the price offered by a certified HUBZone small business concern to be lower than the price offered by another offerer other than another small business concern if the price offered by the HUBZone is no more than 10% than the price offered by the otherwise lowest responsible and responsible offer. That's called the PEP. So we had a number of changes over the last 2 years. The National Defense Authorization Act is one of the vehicles that they use to present those changes. Members of Congress, they submit bills that are incorporated in the NDAA, and then the NDAA is signed by the President with the Department of Defense budget, but also includes all of the other rules and regulations that impact the performance of the program. So one of the rules asked the SBA or directed SBA to implement a public online tool that can be updated immediately after base realignment and closures, disasters, or the government designated coverage areas. So we put that in place. We put that tool in place. It's called SBA.gov/HUBZone, and then we were also told to freeze the maps for 5 years. So we froze the map until January 2020, but which is this current year. But the census is taking place, so the maps will be frozen until the end of this year, and then in the spring of 2021, when we expect that the data, the results of the census will be available, we may have additional data to supplement the maps and update the maps, and then we'll publish those and we'll freeze the database again for 5 more years. So and that way, you know, and usually what we do is in the website, we put some notices. The maps have been updated and things like that. So we amended the 35% rule to add the minimum ceiling of 20% once you certify and you are the apparent successful offerer. And then we also provided a change to the regulation giving credit to a company that had a HUBZone employee that moved from a HUBZone residence to another location but remains with the company, so the company will retain that credit of that 1%. Recertification once a year instead of 3 years. And then we determine HUBZone eligibility at the time of application, not at the time of award. So you need to make sure that you do the 35%, that you comply with the 35% at the time of application. And then if you drop below 35 but higher than or at 20, you're okay. But if you drop below 20, you're not okay. So we're expecting the certified to be updated with the revamped HUBZone application, the formal HUBZone application, which even though it's formal, but it's going to be a more comprehensive form. But all of this was pushed to the right because of the COVID-19 pandemic situation. So we were expecting summer, but I believe summer ends in September. So I know that the contractor is working, but I don't think we're going to be ready by the end of summer. So maybe it could be fall or winter before we're ready with implementing the formal HUBZone program. So you can send questions to headquarters. The contractor will answer those. We have the help desk doing regular conference calls, and Jay is available in our district if you have any questions. And PTAC also can provide assistance. They can probably review your application, certainly help you identify which agencies have which dollars and which opportunities are available to you. So these are the common reasons for rejection or denial. Just like with the 8A, we've had some individuals that they apply, but they don't check that the principal office is not located in a valid HUBZone, and they don't meet the criteria of the program, et cetera, et cetera. Jean, any questions?
No, there was just one that came through on chat that we answered, so no, you can continue.
Okay. So the Women-Owned Small Business Program is a program that has been updated. 15 July is the first window of change, and then the big change is going to take place on the 15th of October. So I'm briefing you on the program that exists before 15 July. So this program carries a 5% prime contracting goal, as I mentioned when we saw the slide for the procurement scorecard, and the idea is to create more opportunities for women-owned small businesses to create and retain more jobs for women entities, and to provide everybody an equal opportunity to, reach for the stars just like everybody else. So under the current program, we use two lists. One list, depending on your primary NAICS code, which is the industry where you generate the majority of the revenues for the preceding 2 years. Depending on which industry you have, you could either be a women-owned small business, or you could be in the list for economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. That's the current program that we have today. So when we implement the formal program, those lists are going away. Everybody will get an opportunity, and you can be an economically disadvantaged if you're below $750,000. So under the old program, the list where we reviewed, we had public hearings, and we looked at the economic activity and the different NAICS codes, and then we determined how to update, and we had about 444 industries for the women-owned programs. And now the program is going to be open to anyone. So, as I mentioned, carry a 5% prime goal, and the contracting officers had to use FAR 1915, top 15 as a reference to select women-owned small businesses. And then the criteria for the contracting officers was based on industry, the rule of two, and the award price. So if they wanted to do a women-owned small business, the next code that was assigned to the solicitation was the next code that was available in the list for women-owned small business. So they needed to make sure that if they wanted to award something for, and I'm just making stuff up, 541-330 engineering services, if the engineering services was one of those next codes, so it was represented in the women-owned small business column, that next code was in the WOSB list because they needed to match. Then the contracting officer needed to have a reasonable expectation that 2 or more women were going to submit an offer. What I've told women in the past was, if you want to be considered under one of these programs for women, and you know, because you should know who your competitors are, you need to find a way to either work with your competition or alert your competition so that there are 2 or more offers. Because it's only one offer, then the contracting officer may say, I can't award because I don't have 2 or more offers, so therefore I'm not going to use the women's status as the preferential set-aside category. And then the award price, again, the criteria was that the contracting officer felt that the contract could be awarded at a fair market price. And to do economically disadvantaged women-owned set-aside, the next code needed to be on the list for economically disadvantaged women-owned, and the contract needed to be coded with a code that was in the list. Reasonable expectation that 2 or more economically disadvantaged would submit, and the contract would be awarded at a fair market price. And using this process, that's how we end up with the numbers that we have in the scorecard where we didn't meet the 5% goal. So the criteria for the women-owned small business program is a small business for the primary next code and for the contract. 51% unconditionally owned and directly owned by a woman or women, a group of women, because they can pull their percentages together. As long as they reach 51%, they can prove that they own the company and they control the company, and they have to be U.S. citizens. Managing the day-to-day operations, making the long-term decisions, holding the highest officer position, working full-time during normal working hours, and no amount of time for the business to be operational. I had a case where one a lady was trying to get certified, but when she submitted her tax returns to the third-party certifier, the third-party certifier found that she was working for one of the parks full-time, and she was making like $100,000, meaning that she had a significant position Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and therefore she wasn't running her business full-time like the definition of the program read, and at the end of the day she can come in and get certified as a women-owned small business for the SBA. So the criteria for economically disadvantaged, the adjusted personal net worth, the asset minus the liabilities, it's got to be less than $750,000, and that's the rationale for the change that we had in the 8A program, because we harmonized the 8A with the economically disadvantaged women-owned small business program. The adjusted gross income average over 3 years is $350,000 or less, just like in the 8A program. And the fair market value assets is $6 million or less, just like in the 8A program. And again, the changes to the 8A program, and these changes are effective 15 July. So currently you can self-certify using 2 routes. You can self-certify, you can do the work yourself. You register in SAM, you compile all the documentation to certify, which is the WOSB repository, and then you go back to SAM and just say, I'm an EDWOSB or WOSB, and that's the end of it. Or you can pay starting at $400 all the way up to $700+ dollars. You still have to register in SAM, or third-party certifier, or the PTAC will register you in SAM. But then the third-party certifier is going to ask you for a number of documents. They will review them, they will analyze them, they will compile and upload to certify, and then they will give you a letter saying you are a women-owned small business. They're going to ask you for 95% of the documentation. They're going to charge you $400. I would say that's not a good proposition for you as a business owner because you're still going to do 5% of the work. But again, it's a business decision that you have to make if you want to play in the program. So the self-certification program involved a number of steps. There was a compliance guide that is still available on the internet that will be revised with the information on the new program. You have to register online for Systems for Award Management as a small business. You have to register at the Certify portal. You have to upload the documentation in the portal, and then you have to represent your status in SAM.gov. You also have to register and create your SBA Dynamic Small Business page profile, which is what the contracting officers will see when they do market research. These are the third-party certifiers that existed before that will continue to exist under the new certification because we did not take away the opportunity for you to use a third-party certifier. That's the decision that you have to make as a business person. So we have El Paso, the National Women Owners, the Women's Chamber, the WeBank. These are the only third-party certifiers that exist in the new environment, but the new environment, the regulations contain language to consider other entities down the road. So there may be some additional certifiers that come in 6 months or a year down the road because the language was already included in the regulation. We just didn't want to create too much of the disruption by eliminating the third-party certifiers. Besides, these people, they lobby very hard, Congress and the SBA, to keep them in the play because they don't want to lose their revenue stream, and I get it. So, but the SBA decided that they need to let people know when they go and apply, hey, the SBA certification, if you decide to go do it on your own, it's free. You don't have to pay anyone. But if you want to pay me, this is what I offer in addition to what you do when you go in return. So to compete with the contracts, where it says FBO, not identified number 2, FedBizOps, that migrated to beta, that's SAM.gov. And that's part of what you need to do to identify market opportunities. You need to do market research. Not only do you have to look at your competition, but you have to look at trends within the market and identify the agencies that are buying, how many dollars they have, who have they bought from before. You need to find if they have any sessions or vendor days or industry days or expos or other events where you can go in and meet face-to-face with those individuals. Then you need to sit down and decide, do I want to make an offer? Do I want to write down an offer? And that's something that within the PTAC function, they may have some training courses. I know that certainly within my 7J training, we have content and courses on how to submit a price proposal for a federal contract. And then the important thing to remember here for the Women-Owned Small Business Program was that once you identified an opportunity, you needed to get their contracting officer's name, phone number, email. You needed to give that officer access to your documentation in the Women-Owned Small Business Program portal. We at the district, we don't have access because we're concerned with your privacy. So you gave access to that contracting officer for a limited amount of time, usually 40 days, 45 days, and then the door will automatically revoke any access to anyone. So the only person that can look at your documentation under the old system is SBA headquarters, and they have 2 persons in there that manage the women's program, and you, because or whoever happens to be your designated business development person that put their information in the system. So we borrow from the HUBZone program eligibility examination. So the same thing that we do with the HUBZone, where we do the no notice visits and we look for certain things, we do the same thing here for the women-owned program. We just didn't want to recreate the wheel because it was a best practice that worked within the HUBZone program. And then for the protest, handling of protest, there's a specific section of 13 CFR dealing size standards 121. And then the administrative judges within the Office of Hearing and Appeals, they know about the women-owned program, the criteria, so they're standing by to listen to any protest that involves women entities. The problem is that because the women entities are not getting enough volume, they're not getting all those protests. So I think little by little they're building up their knowledge base. So starting on the 15th of July, the formal program for the women-owned small business program comes into play. So 15 July until 15 October, that's a transition date where if you are already in the database, you have to go in and download your files and keep them available so that on the 15th of October, when we open the formal program, you can upload and then we can review and make a determination to see if you qualify under the new criteria. If you decide that you want to continue to self-certify, you can do so until the 14th of October. And you can use the two NAICS code, the two list of NAICS codes, and all of the other process that existed before. You can upload the documentation. But the contracting officers, after the 15th of October, they will not be able to issue a federal contract set aside for women entities unless they use the formal program. So if you want to use that preferential criteria, set aside criteria, after 15th of October, you got to be certified in the formal program, so you have to upload documentation to the SBA, okay? So we have the idea is that when we do the women's certification on the proposed rule talked about a 3-year certification program, and we wanted to allow the state and other certified entities, but then what the SBA on the final rule allowed was only the VA. So the DOT certification, they claimed that there was too much risk validating that data, so they did not allow it. But if you're a VA, CVE, Center for Verification and Eligibility certified, service-disabled, veteran-owned, women-owned small business, you can come into the new program, and the SBA will give you reciprocity for that. Okay, so that's questions.
Number one, I want to thank everyone for participating with us today. We are here to serve all of you. Every single business out there, we try our best to help. Our partners at the SBA try their best to help. So feel free to reach out to us. All of my contact information was on the communications you got. So if you have sat through this and realize, hey, I do need to be working with the PTAC, please let me know. I'll be happy to walk you through the steps to make that happen. If you need to get connected with Ed, we can make that happen. So again, I appreciate your participation today. With that, if there are no more questions, we will go ahead and end the webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on one in the future.